In this video, we are going to demonstrate several things, but mostly what we want to demonstrate is the idea of using different modules within your code for input, processing, and output. And we're also going to demonstrate input validation. This particular code is all in one file using the main class and then the main method as my driver. Keep in mind, we don't want to put variables between capital main of the class and lowercase main of the method, because that would make the variables global. And so no variables should be placed here in this section, okay? Also, depending upon the IDE that you have, your capital main might be named something different. Whatever it is named, it will need to match over here. If you are using Replit, you need to name that with a capital main. Let's close our sidebar to get some more screen real estate to work with. We will be using some import statements, scanner, and random. I'm also going to collapse these comments. So declare our constants first. We have an integer array, we have an integer variable named target, and we have a scanner that we're working with. And then part of our modularization for our code is that we're going to have a start routine. And also notice that we have a similar end routine. Both of these are method calls. Remember, you call a method with the name of the method and a parentheses. This particular method has no parameters, no arguments that we are being sent to it. So those particular routines are just outputting some general information for our program. So if I actually run this code right now, it might crash. I haven't run it recently, but we're going to see what happens. But hopefully we will see our start routine. We do. And then we have some output, and then we see the end routine. So as you create different modules within your code, you can execute those, and then you can basically kind of say, okay, I know those modules work, so I'm dividing and conquering. And so that's one nice thing about modularity and using methods, is you can put all the code for a particular method in one routine, and then you can test that. So if we take a look at the output, we do have the program is generating random numbers. And so we ran a fill array, and notice that arguments were sent to this method call. This is a method call. So I'm sending the nums array, the min and the max values. And then next we are going to want to get input from the user. So the objective for this program was to have the user, part of it was to have the user generate or input a target number that they want to find. And then we're going to look for that value on the list. So if I highlight or unhighlight those and do command /, the next thing we're going to do is have the user input a number that they wish to find on the list. And that's going to be assigned target. And then we're going to have to write a method that's going to search for that target. So again, I am just going to test to see if I got this part of the code working. I can do an output, and there is a shortcut for system out. If you .print line, if you do sys out and then hit enter, then you can do whatever you want here. Our target value, just for now, this is what's called an echo check, by the way. I'm just echoing my input at this point in time when I'm writing this code, just to see if it works. So I already know on the right hand side that my program generates random numbers. Now I'm going to ask the user if they would like to search for a target. So it says enter a number you wish to find on the list. So I'm going to say 6, and I'm going to press enter. It says target is 6. It doesn't actually search for that yet. I don't have any message that's telling me. We're going to focus on getting this user input here first, and then we're going to look at doing the search method. So first of all, if I run this code, and you know that, or it says that the random numbers are generated from 1 through 20. But if I run the code, the user is allowed to enter a number such as 55 for that target. Well, we want to prevent them from doing that. We want to add a layer of input validation. So we are going to use a method to do that. The method that we are going to use, I have already written. I am going to collapse these two methods, and the fill array method that we've used and the print array method that we've used. And we are going to focus on this get integer in range method. I am going to move it. The order of these methods as they're written does not matter. I'm going to move that method just so that it's close by for me to look at and I don't have to scroll. But here's the deal. This is how I have written this method. We are going to actually ask the user for their input within the method instead of within main, because then we can add a layer of input validation. So what we are going to do here is add what we call input validation. So for example, anytime you make a purchase online, if they won't let you complete the purchase until you've entered valid information, somebody behind the scenes is writing code like this to make sure you've entered the correct credit card number, the correct expiration date, and all of that stuff. All right. So then the other thing that I want to do here for my input validation is I know the number should be between 1 and 20, or my min and my max. Notice I'm using variables and no magic numbers. I'm going to use a temporary variable within my code here called user input. And if you notice, I did not declare user input at the beginning of my program here. User input is only available within this method. So we say that it is local to this method. As soon as we're done with this method, user input will not exist. So I'm going to say scan.nextInt, and then here's the validation. While the input is smaller than the minimum, or user input is greater than the max, we're going to force them to input a valid number. And as soon as they do that, then we're going to return that number with return user input. So if I go back to my main driver, instead of saying target equals scanner.nextInt, I'm using my scanner.nextInt inside my method. I am going to call my method, which is get integer in range. I have to send it the scanner. I have to send it min. And I have to send it max. I have to send it 3 arguments. Now, capital min is what is in my main driver. That's my constant. It's going into lowercase min, which is not a constant. I did not write the final in front of here, so I'm naming it with a lowercase letters. Capital max is the constant that argument that I am sending. All of these values are the arguments sent to the method. And so now when I execute this code, cross my fingers, when the user inputs something that is not valid, so let's say 55 again, it says outside of range, try again. And I say 3, and then we are good to go. So this is an example of input validation and using a method in order to do that. It also demonstrates how you can send a scanner to a method and use the scanner within that method. Next, we want to determine if the target value that the user just entered is actually on the list. So we want to do some more processing, and we want to find the target. So I want to use another method to do this, and I'm going to create a Boolean variable that just says whether or not it is found, and I'm going to say false. I want to use a Boolean variable because then I can toggle a message on or off based upon that. So I could say if is found, since is found is going to be true or false. If it's true, I'm going to output that we have found the message, found the target value, and otherwise I'm going to say that we have not. And so using a Boolean returning value allows me to tailor a message. So cleaning that up, let's see what we got. So now we should have a message based upon whether the target is found, but we haven't like set that value. Right now it's false. We haven't even looked to see if the target is found. So we're not going to get a message printed yet that's accurate. So I need to write a method that's going to determine and fill the value of is found. So there's a couple ways that I want to think about this. The method that I want to write, I want it to return a Boolean, and I have already written the method, so let's go look at it. So my method that I wrote is going to return a Boolean. So my method header, which is this first line, is public static Boolean find target is the name of my method. I'm bringing in an integer array and a target value. Within the method, I'm creating another Boolean variable. I'm assigning it false because I haven't found the value yet. That variable, found it, only exists within this method. As soon as this method is done, that variable will go out of scope. We're going to look for the target value. And so I just print a user-friendly message in here so that the user knows that we are looking for it. We are going to process the array from 0 to index less than nums.length. Notice we're using nums.length here and less than that, so we don't go out of bounds. I check to see if the target value is equivalent to nums bracket index. I am going to expect to see that bracket notation in a few different places, so I can verify that you can use bracket notation. Those of you that are familiar with the for each or enhanced for loop, you could use that here as long as you show me bracket notation somewhere else as an example. And last but not least, if I find it, I'm going to set found it to true, and then I return that value. So that value will be returned, and we therefore need to capture that value or store it in a local variable, which is why we have this is found variable. So the is found variable will be assigned the value from the return of that method. This method, find targets, going to return true or false. So is found will be assigned the value from, is it found or find? Find target. You know if you are doing that correctly because the IntelliSense will pop up find target, so it's showing you. I need to send in my integer array nums. When I send the argument, I don't include a data type, and I need to send the target. So now I don't know if I've got all my ducks in a row, but we're going to run the program and see what happens. And so we have an error, and this is going to look scary, and this happens frequently when we are writing a large block of code, especially if we're dealing with arrays and scanners and all kinds of stuff. So it is best to address the very first error if possible, and it looks like it's telling me so if I start to look at these messages over here, like it says something about fill array, and I think I have a missing curly brace. I used fill array before, so I know that that works. This next one is something to do with main, and it tells me what line number. It says line number 96, but line number 96 is way down here in some of the code that I know that I have written before. And so there's where I'm thinking I'm off by a curly brace somewhere. So now we have to start to match curly braces. So for example, this curly brace goes with the while. If I click on line 80, that curly brace goes with my method, which seems to be accurate. I have found it. I'm going to test this. So this curly brace goes with the if. The next one goes with the for. The next one goes with the find target. So those actually look okay. I'm going to go all the way back up here. It says 89. Usually this means I've got a curly brace off somewhere. So I have to hunt for my missing curly brace. The other segments of code that I changed were right here. and I just found it on my else. I do not have a beginning curly brace for my else, and so you saw how that threw everything else off. So let's cross our fingers and run it again, see what we get. Instead of 33 errors, hopefully we will get none. Ooh, I have an execution window. What number do I want to find? 5. Looking for 5, found the target. And so now we've got some clean. So if I look at my list of numbers, 5 was on the list, so that makes sense. But I don't like my output. And so this is the point in which we would say, I'm going to now refactor my code. I see how it's executing. And it looks like I have, random numbers from 1 to 20, and then random numbers are generated from 1 to 20. So that's like a duplication. So if I go back in here, I'm going to get rid of this line because it's kind of repetitive. And then you saw when I executed it before, I had outputted the target. So let me try to see if this will run now. Looking for 4. So see how I'm echoing? Or no, that's my input. And it says looking for 4, found the target. Target is 4. So this target is 4 here is kind of repetitive. So I'm going to delete that. And remember, that was an echo check. So now that I'm done with my rest of my code, I can take out and I can clean up and I can refactor some of this code. So now I'm going to run it again and just see if it's looking like what I want to see. And so now it's cleaned up a little bit. I'm going to enter 6, looking for 6. Target value is not found. Clear my console, see if I can execute it again quickly. Sometimes Eclipse is not very fast. And now I'm going to enter a value that's not on my list. So I'll say 67 just to verify that my range is working again. So now I'll say 6. Found the target value. Look at my list. Yep, 6 was found. So, and then execution of the program is done. All right, it's time to wrap this up. I know it's gone way too long. Let's look at the big picture one more time before we're done. So in this particular code, we have our declaration sections. Constants should be named first, and then we have our other values. And we should start to see, instead of a bulk of like a lot of code, we should see a lot of method calls. You can always clean up your formatting by clicking Format here. So I have my start routine call. I have my fill array call. I have my inputting of what number they want to find. I have my call to the find target, which is assigned to the value is found. I have this little bit of code in here to determine if the target value was found. I technically could put all of this within its own method if I wanted to. And I have a print array method and an inRoutine method. So that idea of modularizing your code is like you're doing little mini tasks and then you can test them. And you saw how I incrementally tested some of this code as we went along. And so that's where when I had my 33 errors, I knew it wasn't any of my methods that I had already written because those had been tested before. I knew to focus in on just the most recent code. And remember, I found the missing curly brace right here, which cleaned up 33 mistakes. So this is going to wrap up the presentation. I know it went a little bit too long. Sorry about that.